welcome all of you for this talk series from Arthashastra. Today we have with us a very illustrious personality, Mr. K.S. Sripati, Indian Administrative Service, former Chief Secretary of Tamil Nadu. திரு ஸ்ரீபதி அவர்கள் 1975 ஆண்டு இந்தியன் அட்மினிஸ்ட்ரேட்டிவ் சர்வீஸ் ஆட்சி பணியில் தேர்வு செய்யப்பட்டு அவர் பணியில் சேர்ந்தார். அவர் மதுரையில் உசிலம்பட்டியில் தன்னுடைய ஆட்சி பணியை துவங்கினார். நானும் இந்திய காவல் பணியில் 1975 வருடம் என்னுடைய பணியை துவங்கினேன். நாங்கள் இருவரும் மதுரை பணி செய்தோம் என்பது எங்களுடைய ஆரம்ப கால பணியை துவங்கினோம் என்பது பெருமைக்குரியது. அதற்கு பிறகு அவர் பல மாவட்டங்களில் பணி செய்து மாவட்ட ஆட்சியராக இருந்து அதற்கு பிறகு மத்திய அரசு பணியில் அவர் சிறப்பாக பணி செய்து மீண்டும் தமிழ்நாட்டில் தமிழக அரசாங்கத்தில் உயர் பதவியில் பல பதவிகள் அவர் நிர்வகித்தார். முக்கியமாக என்வரன்மெண்ட் அண்ட் ஃபாரஸ்ட் அதில் முதன்மை செயலராக பணிபுரிந்தார். அதற்கு பிறகு இந்திய ஆட்சி பணியில் இருக்கும் ஒவ்வொருவரும் விரும்பக்கூடிய பணியான தலைமைச் செயலர் பதவி அவர் வகித்து திறம்பட வகித்து கிட்டத்தட்ட 3 வருடம். அதற்கு பிறகு ஓய்வு பெற்ற பிறகு அவர் சீஃப் இன்ஃபர்மேஷன் கமிஷனர் தமிழ்நாடு, அது முக்கியமான ஒரு பணி, அதில் பணி செய்து அவர் 5 வருடம் மிக சிறப்பாக அவர் பணி செய்தார். அவர் இந்த அர்த்தசாஸ்திரா அமைப்பில் மிக மிக முக்கியமான பங்கு வகிப்பவர். இந்த சுற்றுப்புற சூழலை பற்றி இந்த கருத்து பரிமாற்றம் செய்ய வேண்டும் என்று கூறிய பொழுது அவர் நானே இதை பற்றி கூறுகிறேன் என்று அவர் இங்கு வந்துள்ளார். அவருக்கு உங்கள் சார்பாக இதயமார்ந்த வாழ்த்துக்களோடு வரவேற்பதில் மட்டற்ற மகிழ்ச்சி அடைகிறேன். Very warm welcome to Mr. Sripati, who is going to talk to us on India and the environment. He is going to encompass all the environment laws and also the recent notification by Government of India on various environment issues to facilitate development, because ultimately the development on one side and protection of environment on other both have to go hand in hand. So this is a very, very important, very delicate subject. I am very happy Mr. Sripati is with us to share his very valuable thoughts. Welcome once again. Sir, மேடை உங்களுடையது.
நன்றி நண்பர் நடராஜர் அவர்களே. எஸ், என்னுடைய டாக்கும் பேச்சும் ஆங்கிலம் தமிழ் இரண்டுமே கலந்துதான் இருக்கும். அதை பற்றி கவலை இல்லை. நம் என்வாரன்மெண்ட் என்று சொல்லும் பொழுது அல்லது சுற்றுச்சூழல் என்று பேசும் பொழுது இந்த டாபிக் India and environment, it is a very, very specifically chosen topic because as far as India, I am talking about the subcontinent, not just today's geographical or political India. We were very, very conscious of the environment. Why I say is the Himalayas, if you take in the north, considered to be the overhead tank of the entire Central Asia and the north of Vindhyas in the Indian subcontinent. If you take the Western Ghats, it is the overhead tank of the entire peninsular India. Whether it is Kerala, today's political divisions like Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra, Goa, this, that, and everything. Okay. Having said that, let me also say that concerns for environment were intricately intertwined with our conscientiousness. We were quite conscientious about protecting our environment. That is one of the reasons why our ancient people had said, "Neerindri amayadu ulagu, visumbin thuli veezhin allal." Like that, any number of people, including Avayar, we can say about it. Then go to Veda times, they say, "Shannor apo bhavantapitiye shamyor abhishravantunaha." That is another statement which they say. What does it mean? It just means that whatever I eat, whatever I drink, let it be sustainable, let it be pure. Let my thoughts also be pure. So only if the thoughts are pure, everything automatically starts going towards purity. And that is one of the reasons why we had developed the art of column, rangoli in front, so that the ants are also fed. They don't enter into our houses. Mavilai Thoranam, Kamagu, Vazhai, all these things were considered to be fungicides, pesticides, and good air comes into the houses. I can go on telling about it, and that is one of the reasons why all the rivers were sacred rivers. நர்மதே சிந்து காவேரி கோதாவரி என்றெல்லாம் சொல்வார்கள். இந்த மாதிரி அனைத்து நதிகளும் புண்ணிய நதிகள் பழங்காலத்துல. இப்போ present times I'm coming to that very quickly. And every temple had a stalavriksham. Every god or goddess had a vahanam. That is a vehicle. So animals and trees. Shanno astu dvipate sham chatushpate. This is what they said. Which means we take care of dvipate, bipeds, quadrupeds, and everything. Nadapana, urvana, parapana, all those things are involved. So we never harmed nature in the past. Now, having said this much, let me switch over. Somebody may suddenly ask, what about those musical instruments for which leather was made? Yes, all those industries, including the smithies, blacksmithy, goldsmithy, they were all outside in an isolated area. And therefore, they did not pollute the water. They did not pollute the ambient. They did not pollute air, sacred ones. Okay. Now, with the coming in of going to invasions from Central Asia as well as Europe, and then subsequently the Industrial Revolution, what happened? The whole concept of Indian way of life underwent a paradigm shift from sustainable development of the human being based only on environment, only on Bhumi, the earth, the Prithvi. Everything went towards materialism. Spiritualism started slowly disappearing. And industrialization saw to it that the forests were converted for exploitative purposes. And therefore, water bodies got affected. And therefore, the rivers got polluted. And therefore, you can go on and on in this particular regard. Now, that is one of the reasons why even our kings, for example, Kaadu Nadaki. Nadaki means they destroyed the forest and then converted them into urban areas. No. See, many of you people who come from, let us say, the southern districts or even the western districts will know. Thottu, the next one, adjoining. Kaadu Thottu Nadaki. Adjoining the forests, they converted those places into Nadu, that is livable areas. They took care of the people's requirements, that is inclusive development. Kulandottu Valamberiki, so water is required, so water was stored. Like, for example, people who know about the Tanjavur belt, I am talking about the entire area of Tiruchi, Tanjavur, Pudukkottai, today's political. If you see, many of these rivers were made by the kings for sustainable development. Okay. Now, what has industrial development done? Agricultural fields have been converted, forests have been destroyed, and the Shola forests, which if you have been, like for example, I can say with pride, it is not a narcissistic statement, because the entire Western Ghats, the Mahendragiri down in Kanyakumari, right up to Satpuras, I have trekked. Different periods of time, not that I did it at one lap. Likewise, the Himalayas, starting from Leh, today the controversial Pongong and Galwan, I have been there. At that time, I'm talking about myself. And then on the Arunachal Pradesh side, there's a place called Zero, wonderful natural conservationists, those people, Apatani tribes, Mishing tribes. And then coming down to that area. Now, what happened? The people of our people, I'm talking about our people, the tribals knew what forest was because it is their life sustenance. Now, for our purposes, since this is the environment is a subject which is as vast as the ocean and as infinite as the sky, I'm going to put down only points. So, and will respond to the questions if there are any. Okay. No, I am dividing the entire environmental issue into only three segments. It is not necessarily a scientific division, but still for our convenience, I am going to do this. That is rural. Rural, which covers forests and agriculture. Urban, that is, it covers people and industries. And coastal, the maritime areas. I will take up the rural area first for simple, like for example, Ainjanai in Tamil. Ainjanai, what does it say? Malayum, Malay சார்ந்த இடமும், காடும், காடு சார்ந்த இடமும், likewise it goes like that. Now, why should we take the forests as the most important aspect in environment concern? Mainly because it is the catchment area. I said it is over a tank, Western Ghat for example, or the Himalayas for example, they are the over a tank. நீரின்றி அமையாது உலகு. So where is water? If water is polluted, the earth gets polluted. If the earth gets polluted, then like that, it goes. The entire ambience is polluted, and therefore we get into a mess, which resulted in ozone depletion, ozone layer, this, that, everything, all kinds of jargons flying here and there and everywhere. The food security is gone, and which resulted in using chemical fertilizers in agriculture department, this and that. Forests were exploited by the British mostly for their own materialistic use. For example, anybody who has gone to, let us say, Top Slip, they said the name Top Slip itself came because they were rolling teak wood, timber from top of the hill right down to the river. So it was just slipped around. So Shola forests were converted into teakwood forests, Tectona grandis. And that was considered to be the best because it is exploitative and therefore productive forestry use, this and that. And grasslands, if you go to the top, like western catchments in the Nilgiris, grasslands, windswept grasslands, they were planted with water. And they destroyed forests because all these species are exotic species and therefore resulted in precipitation coming down and therefore resulted in drought and cascading effects. So come 1980s, the government decided that there has to be a drastic paradigm shift in the overall approach, which means the forestry management attack that first, then environment takes care of itself. Therefore, what was the forest department doing? Way back in 1986 itself, there was a program called the Hill Area Development Program in Tamil Nadu, which was there in Nilgiris. I was collected there at that time. We decided, how do we prevent forests getting eroded? Don't start laughing. We fenced the forests. Thousands of acres were fenced with chain link fencing. In fact, Government of India, of course, gave quite a lot of funds for this. They started laughing the moment this was given. So they had to be told, see, it is cattle browsing. It is human interference into the forest. The moment they start trampling on the forest area, that is the leaf litter which falls down, you trample on that, the shoots just don't come. It is not just one tree, but it is the entire segment of three layers, namely the ground level, middling, and then the tall trees. So the moment you trample on the lower level strata, that is the grassland, there will be shoots, this and that, the first level is gone. Therefore, and the cattle browsing, any neighboring villages, they would like to let the cattle inside the forest, mostly for exploitative purposes. And therefore, we should fence it first. And we succeeded. Believe me, many of the Shola species, Shola forests, which disappeared, were regenerated in a matter of about 10 to 15 years, starting from, let us say, 1986, if I remember correct. And the Sholas have started regenerating. See, one thing with the trees is that they do not require the human beings' intervention at all. They do not want the human beings to come anywhere nearby. Don't trample on me. Don't eat me. That's the cry which it gives. Allow them to grow. Remove all the exotic species. Now, by exotic species, what I mean is this Eucalyptus globulus. There are at least 400 varieties, but we imported, the Brits imported Eucalyptus globulus, the three varieties of Eucalyptus. Let me not get into the botanical names. And wattle. Okay. These wattle trees are invasive species. They destroyed the forest, the solar forest. Gradually, we started removing them, and now the government of Tamil Nadu has started removing them totally, lock, stock, and barrel. In the sense, even the roots had to be removed. Then the lantana came. Lantana also started spoiling. So the approach was till then was only exclusive. The people were kept out. The tribals whose life was depending on the forest produce, it started deteriorating, and therefore they started invading into the forest. Therefore, what we did, included them in our forest management. So the Hill Area Development Program also gave certain aspects of development. It is a very, very thin line between development and sustenance and conservation. We have had series of arguments with Sundarlal Bahuguna and this and that on ground how development and conservation, preservation have to be taken simultaneously. Where it is required, you have to be very, very steadfast on conservation. Where it is required, you can go on development and this kind of stuff. And we succeeded quite a bit. And the government of India took this as a great example and started replicating it in other states. Likewise, the Western Ghats Development Program and at a subsequent date, Eastern Ghats Development Programs also were introduced. The main purpose was that we knew that this will have a spread effect from forests downwards. Therefore, the agricultural operations will be much better. Water flow is going to be much higher because all this flora, fauna, and this species would definitely bring down the water, which is rich in minerals, rich in nutrients, and therefore you would require manure to the minimum extent. But what we had done in the past was we were using fertilizers, pesticides, fungicides, this, that, left, right, and center. That to a large extent also spoiled, and all our water bodies started getting depleted. Now, come 1997, the then state government again decided, let this be taken up further and not left at a small part of the state like the Hill Area Development Program in the Nilgiris. Therefore, what we did was took up a project to forest. From the exploitative forests, we started taking it as a productive forest, not in commercial sense, but a sustainable forest, conservative aspects, plus include the people inside the forest itself for exploitation. Japan, that is JICA, Japanese Institution for Japanese International Cooperation Agency, decided, came forward and then gave us a lot of assistance. Now, one interesting aspect in this, why it is inclusive and exclusive, I repeated more than once, is this. This JICA was not interested. I was there for the discussion, negotiation in at that time. The then conservator forest was telling, sir, we have to include the people, otherwise this program will not survive. Yes, he was absolutely right. If there is no people-centric program, nothing will survive. Whether it is industrial or whatever, please understand that if there is no people's involvement, if there is no inclusiveness, no program will survive. Ab initio, it will become dead. But the government had not, I'm talking about our government, state government had not mentioned anything about it. Now, what do we do? I'm sitting in Tokyo, this fellow says, no, we cannot give, support the people's involvement in this and that. I was in a dilemma. So I said, okay, I take the decision, I take the risk, do whatever. We will support the people's movement from our funds. Okay. So the JICA immediately agreed and we had the Tamil Nadu Afforestation Program. I'll come to the TAP, which is the most important factor as far as environmental, ecological concerns are concerned, as far as Tamil Nadu and the rest of the Deccan Plateau itself is concerned. Now, after signing this, and then we came back to the state, and what was done was, believe me, we constituted what is called an empowered committee. This empowered committee is as good as the cabinet. So it is headed by the chief secretary, member secretary, forest secretary, then the principal conservator of chief conservator of forest, vagaira. So this empowered committee took decisions on all the aspects. No questions asked. Financial powers were also given. So this was another aspect where, see, many of you are civil service aspirants. That's why I'm taking this point. I'm mentioning this point. Otherwise, I would not have mentioned this. A civil servant can, if he wants. Now, in this particular aspect, I had no permission from the government. I had no clue from the government as far as what I could do if the JICA did not agree for this. I said, I take the decision myself. But how we did it, yes, empowered committee was constituted, therefore the cabinet need not be disturbed at every time, and therefore all things happened pretty fast, very fast. The empowered committee itself would issue orders after getting orders up to the chief secretary, issue this is everything. Now the importance of this TAP, that is Tamil Nadu Afforestation Program, which started in 1997 and concluded in 2002, had village forest councils. That's what I said, the people's involvement. People's participation, without that nothing happens. I can tell you, I can assure you that. Where the village forest council had members drawn from, if they are tribal areas, tribal community, if it is only an adjoining forest village, the forest villages, there was no political involvement. Whatever Kachi they belonged to, they were not involved. The president is your member only. The forest ranger, depending upon the largeness or whatever of the village, became a hand holder for some time, or the district forest officer became hand holder. They were given seed money by the government, and this they used. The forest produce was collected and sold, but on a sustainable basis. Everything was accounted for and went off superbly. They had to select their own people, and therefore this was a major success. Believe me, when this program was started, the forest cover in Tamil Nadu was hardly 12%. So poor, so poor. Though we wanted it to be 33%, but it is never there in any other part of India. The Nilgiris district, the forest cover is 55% because it is a forest district. Nothing else can be said about it. No, it's no great shakes. Therefore, what we did, the forest cover started increasing from 11 to today it is roughly 20. Can you believe it? Yes, it is believable. You please go through the Forest Survey of India report and then find out that forest cover has been increasing day by day, day by day, day by day. Now, let me give you very, very clear examples. If some of you may be belonging to Madras and you would have definitely gone to the airport or close by. There's a place called Tirusulam. Now, you would have seen maybe in old movies only quarries, absolute barren rocks. Now, today, believe me, you can see the forest there. You can see the growth, lush green growth. The DFO was given this task way back in 1996, I think. Now, try and show that you can convert the barren rock to forest. Yes, it was done. And the village, entire village gathered around and then thanked the forest department profusely because the barren rock started producing water. You know, if you want, I can even read out from a research article written by somebody at a subsequent, very recently, 2005, where they say the people who had only tiled roofs are now, thatched roofs are now having tiled roofs or concrete sheds. The temple there is so beautiful, cultural, aesthetic, everything is that it is possible. It is possible. Now, by attacking the forests, attacking this particular rock, we were able to improve the economy and therefore the ecology of this particular village. Number of examples I can give. If you are from Kallakurichi, that area, there is one Sandavasal. Now, please go and see what it was and what it is. Now, what it was absolutely barren. Nothing would grow. But today, it's a beautiful forest. This is what happened. Now, in this connection, let me say that the Tamil Nadu in the sense I'm talking, if I say Tamil Nadu, it means the entire southern districts, southern states of Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, and to a certain extent Goa also. So Tamil Nadu doesn't mean that only the Tamils. Okay, let it not be there. So what our people did was, they had this ingrained in them, and therefore they started working on these things, and the forests were respected, and we can see even inside the forest Vanadurga temples, and the Vanadurga temples were protected, not necessarily by the very pious people, but also by atheists. They would like to go because that's how it is. Now, the forests were definitely trained. They had to be trained because sometimes the human interventions, sometimes due to other exploitations, they had become very fragile. Nilgiris the Western Ghats were never known for landslides, but unfortunately today heavy landslides had taken place, and therefore the rivers had to be stream trained. You may be surprised, why should the stream be trained? But yes, it had to be done. And many of these areas had to be developed into conservation zones. Now, as far as the whole world is concerned, 1972, I'm just jumping to the current day, whereas Tamil Nadu had, as early as 1882, we had the Madras Presidency Forest Act. Government of India had the act only in 1927. In 1972, the Stockholm Declaration of the United Nations declared that we have to do something about the environmental issues. I think the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi made a declaration stating that poverty is the worst cause for the environmental degradation. And that's why poverty alleviation programs also started simultaneously in urban areas. I will come to urban area a little later, to the urban areas also. And to that extent, pressure on forests decreased. Okay. Now, I mentioned about after that, we almost forgot about all these things. Forest projects just started going up. And in 1988, from 1988 onwards, suddenly we woke up. The government of India, the state governments woke up. National forest policy, national wildlife policy, this, that, everything, air quality act, water quality act, this pollution control act, a plethora of acts came into being. We had already Tamil Nadu Hill Area Preservation Act, we had private Protection of Private Forests Act, and the things like that. And that was revealing in the sense quite a large number of chunks of lands had been encroached upon by private people for estate purposes, plantations. In fact, believe me, there was one slip of paper, it is only this big, let's say 2 inches by 2 inches. I took it from the archives, wherein the then collector one Blake in 1836 has written, so and so met me over tea. He is interested in raising coffee. Godalur will be an interesting place, therefore he is given 5,000 acres. That's it, simple. 5,000 acres of Shola forest in the western slopes of Nilgiris was just handed over to some ex. கடத்தேங்காய் எடுத்து வழிப்பிள்ளையாருக்கு உடைச்ச கதை இது. This is it. And that area, not 5,000, it became 50,000, it became much more. Now, any number of forest plantations you can see, I'm talking about the tea plantations. They started planting teak wood, rosewood trees, you should have seen to believe, huge. The girth itself would be about nearly 25 to 30 feet. This is the kind of stuff which was there. But anyway, things have started improving. Let me go a little bit to the Tamil Nadu afforestation project itself, because what has happened was the people were involved, and therefore the buffer zone, that is the core area where no human interference is called for except for research and management purposes, then the buffer area, then the other areas. Now you may be doubting, there's no point in just conserving the forest when people do not find their sustenance. That is how the Hill Area Conservation Authority, HACA, they say HACA, was created. Any development plans, like construction for example, within those areas which are identified, which were a play committee Aesthetics and Architecture Authority. These committees also took into consideration all the activities of. There was coordination. So the collector in the respective districts were made the focal point with the assistance from every department. And the government was reviewing the projects in the planning and development department, and therefore the sustenance was also taken care of. The requirement of other departments are also taken care of, to the extent that it was only sustainable development, nothing more than that. And no question of productive forestry. The paradigm shift, which I said in the beginning, like from exotic species, planting exotic species for exploitative purposes, like pulpwood, for example, paper industry requires pulpwood. No, today we don't plant pulpwood at all. All the eucalyptus trees and wattle trees, these things, eucalyptus trees are not being planted at all. Of course, they do raise some of the forests which have eucalyptus trees are still there. Then what we did, these forestry, you need paper. Okay, so encourage private people, private lands to plant pulpwood, to raise pulpwood. Started buying that, and therefore the people who are going to the forest to fell the trees were slowly taken out of this. Now Nilgiris got another advantage, the sense from the government or concession from the government. The gas supply, for example, everybody was being given gas supply, and power cut which was there all over the state. Nilgiris did not have it because it's a cold climate, harsh climate. This applies to the Western Ghats. I say Nilgiris because I've been associated with that for quite some time, and therefore I keep telling. And therefore, this sustenance, weaning people away from depending on forest to a large extent. Now, let me go directly to the maritime area. No, one thing I forgot. See, first ever biosphere reserve. This is a concept which we introduced in 1987. The E&F secretary in Delhi was Mr. T.N. Seshan. He was a very famous, you call him very famous Seshan. He was CEC, Chief Election Commissioner. He was the first secretary, so we had a chat with him, and we immediately started the Nilgiris Biosphere Reserve, first ever. The Nilgiris Biosphere Reserve is an enlarged, expanded variety, the expanded concept of having in it the forests of all the neighboring states, and development of people, conservation, preservation, development, sustenance. This you take everything is incorporated inside this biodiversity. It's a kind of a loose organization, loose concept, and that has done wonders. This was replicated. That is another thing. This was replicated elsewhere, and we have 4 or 5 cold desert biosphere reserve. In the northeast, we have biosphere reserve, things like that. Now, let me come to the coastal area. See, ours is a maritime state. We have 1,160 kilometers of beach line, beachfront. Okay. Now, quite a large number of people depend upon the ecosystems, economic systems of these seas. Now, what happened? Like in the Aindinele, naval belongs to this. Therefore, our people again had a lot of respect for the sea. Samudra Rajan, they never did anything else. So, Muttu, pearl culture, they did it, and they respected. They had all kinds of respect. This, and then only they did it. Seagrass. We somehow, for some reason, the government of India decided that there will be coastal regulation zone, which meant that 1 kilometer, 500 meters, depending upon the distances, there will be no development. Things went to such ridiculous extent that somebody went to the Supreme Court stating that even having a goal post on the beach is an affront to the coastal zone regulation, and therefore it is an offense. Several projects got stalled. Many people, if you have been to Bombay, the Worli, that sea link, that got stalled. I mean, likewise, many such things got stalled. Either we go to this extreme or to the other extreme. There is no via media where the line is drawn between development and conservation. So at that stage, we had very, very series of discussions with the government of India, with M.S. Swaminathan, Professor Swaminathan. He was also consulted. We had series of discussions, and then modified the whole thing to ensure that there is a sustainable development. We quietly weaned people away from Fishing. Today there is a lot of controversy about dynamite fishing. What is that? Trawler, using a trawler, scrap fishing, this and that. We quietly, very slowly, slow and steadily, we prevented all these things. Gave them sustainable work like growing seagrass, growing seaweeds, going like that. And that was the time when we started the Gulf of Mannar Marine Biosphere Reserve. If you have been to that area, the Park Strait and Gulf of Mannar, the colored fish is something amazing. It is not there anywhere else in the world. And also, what is called the sea cow, dugong, is there only in this region, nowhere else. So we started this Gulf of Mannar Marine Biosphere Reserve, and all these things we wanted to do, and we did in the Tamil Nadu Afforestation Project. We replicated in the Gulf of Mannar Biosphere Reserve Project. Now, what happened? The government of India really appreciated and took quite a large number of these government orders and research papers and started replicating it. Let me go a little bit to the North Indian states. Say, for example, Northeast, for example, even Ladakh, for that matter. Now, Northeast, again, the entire Assamese, Arunachal, Mizoram, Tripura, all these states, they have their own way of living in tune with nature. No, but they had one destructive habit, that is zooming cultivation, which means they will cultivate in a particular area this year, burn it, go to another area. Okay. Now, this is a destructive forest practice. Therefore, what the government of India did, in a place called Zero, that is Arunachal Pradesh. I said Zero is very close to Bhutan, not very far away. Zero. Zero, what they did, you may be wondering why it's called Zero. It is Ziro, and there is a small hillock. A river goes round it. It's exactly like a zero. So their spelling is Zero, Ziro. These people were taught cultivation using this water, rainwater harvesting, and within 3 years they stopped zooming cultivation. And Assam, the same thing. We have what is called the National Himalayan management committees, quite a good number of them. Sustainable tourism also has been there. Kumaon Mandal, Tourism Nigam, this, that, everything is there. I'll come to tourism a little bit, which to a large extent has affected the forestry and has also benefited in both ways. If you have specific questions, I will touch on tourism. Otherwise, I will not like to take your time, more time on this. I think we are already okay. Now, let me come directly to the coastal region, coastal management. Industries were being set up on the coastal side because all the industries do require a lot of water. A number of examples I can give, but I will not touch upon any particular industry because some of them have become very controversial, and therefore I am not going to talk about it. Either on the river side or near the sea coast, but at that time only Government of India went into a huddle with every expert, so-called expert. Series of cases were there in Supreme Court, like for example the Vellore Citizens Forum case against the leather industry in India, leather industry in Tamil Nadu, the dyes industry in Kumarapalayam, Salem, Erode, Namakkal region, and then the Mathura refinery, Taj Mahal, this and that in Uttar Pradesh. All these things resulted in a little bit of judicial reach. I won't say overreach or outreach or activism, judicial reach. Hitherto, all these things were within the confines of the executive, it went to the judiciary, and therefore, quite a large number of acts were formulated to protect air, water, and earth. These things were started, and these acts have come into existence. Industries were categorized into orange, green, orange, and red. Red categories definitely required permission from the competent authorities. The environmental boards were set up, environment authorities were set up. See, India, this is one thing. Anything you want to do, immediately you set up a committee or set up a board. So that is what has happened to this also. Quite a large number of boards have been set up. And any project required a plethora of activities to be taken up, plethora of permissions to be taken up. See, in total contrast to why I used the example of Tamil Nadu Afforestation Project was, we set up what is called the Empowered Committee. Everything could be done. The so-called single window concept, it was done just like that. But here, what happened? Because there are different laws, different ministries, and different agencies were looking into, every project got badly delayed. Every project got badly delayed, and therefore setting up of industry became a bit of a big issue. And today people talk about the ease of doing business in India. Those things you keep reading about it, and mainly because of this kind of a rigmarole. From see, previously they used to say permit license permit quota, and from that we completely moved out to easy approach to anything. But now again we have gone back to that kind of a system, which is unfortunate, but it is rectifiable, not that it is not rectifiable. Now these industries, for example the leather industry, they were totally indiscriminate in letting the water into the streams, and this resulted in the water uh, groundwater level and groundwater quality going down very badly. Okay, so just one moment. So the High Court set up, Supreme Court set up a committee which will go into the compensation level, this and that, everything went on that score. I'm not touching on these things very deeply for a simple reason. I said environment issues are infinite. It is as big as the ocean. Anything is an environment issue. Like, for example, the number of flights which take off, which are there in the sky, that causes air pollution. Yes, talk about it for 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, whatever. So let us not get into that. Likewise, the maritime also. There is now a rule, Basel Convention, this convention, any number of conventions we have there, but we continue to do whatever we are doing. Now I'm coming to the urban areas. Okay, I'm just leaving them then and there. Now I'm coming to the urban areas. In the last 25, 30 days, 30 years, what has happened is urban area, that is the concrete jungle, much higher than whatever one had planned for, let's say about 30 years back, 40 years back. And this has resulted in what is called atmospheric pollution. So every time you have to dig up a road, there is a lot of soil, there is a lot of sand. And every time you dig up a road, you have to redo it. Therefore, one hillock has to be complete to get the blue metal, jelly, this, that, that. Therefore, the government started looking into alternative sources, aggregates. At that time, they said surfacing, you have to reuse end-to-end surfacing and no cutting of roads within 1 year of its laying. But it is there. The orders are there only on paper. We were not able to enforce for a simple reason. The pressures for this civic community things happening. See, one thing I should tell you here, many of you people may be interested in knowing or an area is developed. Civic amenities are made, and there it does not happen. It is the opposite way. The first time we did in Tamil Nadu, Ananagar project, housing area in Tamil Nadu, in Asia was the Ananagar project developed by the Housing Board. Yes, all the infrastructure was provided, were sold, this, that, that. There are some problems as it happened. That continues to be there. Now, why I take urban pollution wise, take for the city of Old Delhi, take for the city of Chennai itself, Old Chennai. The Brits called it Black Chennai, and then subsequently Georgetown. This everything name was changed. Likewise, Mumbai also. Navi Mumbai is now very well developed, much better than the old Salsette Island. Every city, for that matter. Indiscriminate development, indiscriminate allowing of high-rise buildings. Now, without providing for the sustainable civic amenities, there is no point in giving permission for high-rise buildings. That is what has happened, and therefore the generation of water, effluent water. And what they did, let everything into the river. At one point, one moment, something went wrong with my system. No, right, back. At one point, we were revering rivers as goddesses. At other point, we started letting polluted water into the rivers. And like, for example, Coombe and Adyar, if many of you based in Madras will know, Coombe and Adyar, Pachaipa Mudaliar is stated to have taken bath on a daily basis near today's that Chitra Talkies is not there. That bridge where the BSNL, where the telecom office is there, very close to that place. He used to take bath on a daily basis, go to a temple. This is way back in 1935, 40, 50. That's all. Now today, would anybody even think of going anywhere? Okay, now Western Ghats, for example, I will touch upon only two committees which were set up recently. If you are interested, I can talk about it. The Madhav Gadgil Committee, and then subsequently Kasturi Rangan Committee. That is rich, very rich bauxite mineral. A particular company applied for converting that area into a mining zone. Do you think permission should have been given? Tremendous pressures were put on the forest secretary at that time. He said, "You shall give permission over my dead body." That was his comment. Anyway, that was given up. So that was then subsequently this Madhav Gadgil Committee, then Kasturi Rangan Committee, all these things have gone into the bookshelves of maybe research universities or the ministries. Nothing has happened, unfortunately. If that is sustained, then maybe we will be in a position to do anything much better and preserve our forests. Now, the very, very recent one, the EIA, Environment Impact Assessment draft, which has been made public. Let me caution you, this is only a draft. Okay. This is not an act. Many people, especially the social media, have said that it's an act, it's going to kill this, that, everything. No, that's not the case, because we have developed a tendency, especially people with some leanings, have started objecting to anything and everything without even knowing what is what. Whether it is Kodangulam project or Neutrino project, let me not name project. First thing, unfortunately, we have got into that syndrome today. And this environment impact assessment draft, which has now come out, the last date for seeking public opinion. Public can be anybody. You and I can give comments on that. These things will have to be taken into account. This will be examined again by the ministries concerned. Go before, it has to be drafted as a bill by the law ministry, then it goes to the department. Now, you may ask about what are the drawbacks. We cannot implement. Unfortunately, Kerala was represented only by a junior level officer for some reason, and they must pick up the courage and tell the government of India that it is not sustainable. Fortunately, the then minister saw the point, and then there was a series of discussions, including experts on that, and quite a lot of changes were given. Now, coming to the environment impact assessment draft, the same thing has happened here also. This has been drafted by people who do not necessarily think that India is of subcontinental dimension. Like what is applicable in Northeast, it's a Himalayan region. What is applicable to Northeast is just not applicable, let us say, to Ladakh. This is a cold desert. Ladakh is a cold desert, whereas the Northeast is full of forests, rainforests, greenery, from to Western Ghats. You can see all the 6 types of forests, savannas, that is, it is to be taken. Examples have been given. If there is an objection, only no NGO can file a case. That looks a little odd. Government department can file a case if at all. And why should government file a case against the government? Now, these are all gray areas which I think will be completely taken care of before the draft comes into a bill and then considered by the consultative committee, then by the parliament. I'll stop here because I think I have far exceeded my time given. We can have an interaction depending upon the time allowed by the academy.
So thank you very much, Mr. Sripathi. ஸோ எல்லோரோட சார்பிலும் உங்களுக்கு மிக்க நன்றி.